what is the maximum permissible limit for a candidate?
70 lakhs or so.
Parliamentary constituency.
For-
70 lakhs.
Of course, my lord, this limit is not adhered to. We all know that, because candidates are spending 10 times, sometimes 100 times the amount in cash. Now, Election Commission says, though it's a corrupt practice, spending more than the limit is a corrupt practice, but Election Commission says, look, we can't catch them. Everybody knows that many candidates are spending many times by cash. One of the arguments in this for introducing electoral bonds was, the stated argument of the government was that, well, this goes through the bank. These electoral bonds can only be purchased through bank transactions by check, draft or direct transfer. Therefore, it will reduce cash. That was their argument. I think very simple. If you wanted to curb the role of cash in elections, all that you had to do was to pass a simple amendment saying no political party or candidate shall be allowed to spend or take any money through non-banking channels. Everything will have to go through banking channels. And if you do that, it will be a corrupt practice. Suppose such an amendment, when this note ban was brought about, one of the objectives given, stated objectives of the government was that we want to make a cashless economy because we want the role of cash to be reduced. Now, I can understand that ordinary person on the street can't be made cashless. He can't be expected to do all his transactions through check and banking channels, but political parties and candidates contesting elections, they could have been made cashless by this simple law saying that you have to, or if you are a candidate or if you are a political party, all your transactions have to be through banking channels.
Still on the SBI issuing bonds to persons who are not residents in India?
Yes, the requirement is that they have to give a KYC, whoever purchases electoral bonds. So the identity of the person who purchases the electoral bonds will be known to the State Bank of India. But because they have now opened the route by making this amendment that the limit of 7.5% of the annual profits has been totally removed. So even if you are a loss-making company, or even if you are a company which does no business, just a pure shell company, let's say, my lord, your lordship is aware that in that Adani SEBI matter, they are saying, SEBI is saying, we don't know whether these companies who have invested in the Adani companies from Mauritius and from these tax havens, whether they are in fact owned by Adani or not, or whether they are related to Adani or not. Now it is open to any of these companies to set up a subsidiary in India and donate to any political party of their choice any amount, even if it's a pure shell company, which means no business, no profits, just an amount is received from its parent company, which is registered in a tax haven, and that amount is given to a political party. So one of my arguments, my lord, I have three main arguments which I am going to argue before your lordship against these electoral bonds. The first is that it defeats the people's right to be informed about the sources of funding of political parties, which in my respectful submission and in the light of several judgments of this court, is a fundamental right of citizens under Article 19(1)(a). That's the first argument. Because right to information has been held to be a fundamental right under Article 19(1)(a). In fact, in that ADR judgment and then in the follow-up PUCL judgment, this court said that every citizen has a fundamental right to know about the assets and liabilities of every candidate, about the criminal antecedents. And when that was sought to be overcome by means of an amendment, that amendment was struck down on this precise ground.
Okay, that's the first submission. What is the second?
That's the first. Second is that this opaque instrument, anonymous instrument, in fact promotes corruption in the country because there is good reason to believe, and I'll show my lord why, that these bonds are being given by way of kickbacks. Kickbacks to parties in power. Almost all the bonds have been received only by parties in power. More than 50% have been received only by the ruling party at the center, and the rest have been received only by the ruling party in the states. Virtually nothing, not even 1%, has been received by opposition parties which are not ruling in the center or at the states. And virtually all the bonds have been purchased by corporates, by companies, because they are almost all of denomination of 1 crore and above. 95% are in the denomination of 1 crore. 1 crore. Therefore, my lord, and you have simultaneously amended you have removed the cap on corporate donations and amended FCRA.
All right, there's a second submission.
That's the second submission.
The
The third submission is, my lord, that it disturbs and indeed destroys democracy in this country because it does not allow a level playing field between political parties which are ruling versus political parties which are in opposition, or between political parties and independent candidates. It will have, in fact, my lord, just to give your lordship a small figure, in the last 5 years, of which since the electoral bonds were introduced, 2017 they were introduced, 17, 18 to 21, 22, 5 years? 5 years. The contribution to political parties by way of electoral bonds has far exceeded any other method of contributing to political parties. Not only that, the amounts are so large. Just take one party, the ruling party at the center. The contributions by way of electoral bonds to just this one party ruling at the center is more than 5,000 crores in just a period of less than 5 years. Now just look at that figure. The limit for spending on each candidate fixed by the legislature is less than 1 crore per Lok Sabha constituency, less than 1 crore. If you set up candidates in all the constituencies in the country, the total amount that can be spent by the candidates of any political party is less than 500 crores in a Lok Sabha election. In just these 5 years, one party which has received the bulk of the political funding by way of electoral bonds is getting more than 10 times the maximum permissible expenditure on elections by its candidates. More than 10 times. So just see, my lord, what this is doing to our democracy. The political party also may not come to know who has donated. Political party, it's open for a political party to say that, well, we opened our office in the morning and we saw these 100 crores of electoral bonds lying under our door. We deposited these electoral bonds. We don't know who has given them, because these are bearer bonds. So therefore, all that the political party will disclose in their accounts would be that out of the total contributions that they have received, donations that they have received 500 crores by way of electoral bonds. That they have received total 700 crores, out of which 500 crores are from electoral bonds. That's all. But that match of who purchased this electoral bond and which party encashed this particular electoral bond, that match, if at all, it can only be done by the State Bank, which is a Government of India institution. Of course, State Bank is also effectively prohibited from disclosing it. But the scheme says that if a law enforcement agency needs to know this, get this information, it may ask the State Bank to disclose this. So if at all, only a law enforcement agency, which are all essentially controlled by the government, or the government itself, because it controls the State Bank, can come to know only this much, that this particular bond was purchased by this company and this was encashed by this party. But nobody else can come to know this information under the scheme of electoral bonds. Nobody else. They are not even the election commission, because the only account that is submitted to the election commission by the political parties is that we receive so much by way of electoral bonds. They are not obliged to disclose who gave them. In fact, they may even say, we don't know who gave it. We opened our office, it was lying under the door, we encashed it. So therefore, they may even turn around and say that. In fact, there is an interim order of this court in this very case, by which this court said that all political parties should disclose the donors of these electoral bonds to the election commission pending the hearing of this case. There is an interim order to that effect. But when that information is finally seen, I dare say, my lord, that some of these political parties would have said, we don't know. We don't know.